Ambassador Huckabee, thank you so much for taking the time to being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for visiting with me.
We heard President Trump speaking about the protests that we are seeing in Iran these days, promising to come to the rescue of these protesters, sending warnings to the Ayatollah regime not to hurt these protesters. How likely are we to see an American operation against the Ayatollah regime to topple this regime that, as you say yourself, is the source of all those problems in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think we got to be clear. Iran is the kitchen from which all these dishes get served. It may be served by Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis, but it's still the same chef, the same kitchen. It's all coming out of Tehran. Whether or not the U.S. would become actively involved, I don't know. I'm not sure that we're seeing ourselves as a role in being a part of a revolution. I think everybody understands that the ideal way for a regime change in Iran is for the people of Iran to make this decision. You would think after 46 years that the Iranian people, especially those who remember life back prior to 1979, when the Persian culture, the Persian government, I mean, it was really something to be envied. And, you know, you can understand why the people of Iran are very unhappy. Add to that, their economy is completely in tatters. They don't have enough water. And what does the Iranian government do? They spend every last dime trying to build rockets and missiles and fund foreign proxies whose purpose is to kill Jews in Israel and to attack America.
But if we do see more involvement of the regime in hurting these protesters, is President Trump likely to follow up with his warning?
I would always say this: if the president says something, you could pretty much take it to the bank. So I can't tell you how, when. Those are things I simply don't know. But when the president says something, I listen very carefully, because I found that when he says it, he means it, and people had better take that seriously. I don't know how all this plays out. He's not shared that with me. But when he says something, I know I write it down and say, I'll be watching.
We heard some very clear statements from President Trump about the need to disarm Hamas and the fact that it will only be given a short period of time to do so. Still, there are no signs of Hamas disarming. Quite the opposite. Intelligence shows that Hamas is rebuilding itself, regrouping for a possible attack, or at least holding on to power. What should we expect in terms of a deadline for disarming this terrorist group?
I think they should listen very carefully to what the president has said. He's made it very clear. Hamas has no future there. He's never said anything except that. But they would do well to just look back to the recent history of what happened when Iran did not take the president seriously. And he told them, you're not going to enrich uranium, and you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they kept moving toward it. And then we saw not only Rising Lion, but we saw Midnight Hammer and the B-2 bombers coming from the U.S. to bomb Fordo. If Hamas did not learn something from that, we have a saying where I come from in the South, back in the States: there is no education in the second kick of a mule. It means that if you didn't get the message the first time, you probably won't get it the second time. Hamas could lay down their arms, they could get out of the country, or they can test President Trump's resolve. I would not recommend they do the latter.
Do you see a situation in the coming months where Israel goes back to fighting to take down Hamas?
You know, it's hard to determine who will do it and how they will do it. I can't predict that. I just simply don't know. I have every confidence that when the president tells them they're going to disarm, they will. And how it happens and who carries it out, I'm going to leave that to the president, to the Israelis. They'll be the ones who will probably figure it out. And when that decision is made, it will be made with clarity, and it will be made with force.
One country that has volunteered to be part of that force is Turkey. But Israel is very clear, not wanting to see any Turkish presence in Gaza. Will President Trump push Netanyahu to allow this Turkish involvement?
I think one thing we've seen with the president and his relationship with the prime minister is that there is very, what I would call not just strong relationships, but there is very honest and frank conversations that these two leaders share. We saw that in every instance in which they've been together. I mean, look at the fact that the prime minister has been to the U.S. and had more visits with President Trump than any other world leader. In fact, most of them might have one. He's had, I think, 5. So it's a pretty remarkable relationship because it's in our strategic interest as the United States to have this level of partnership with Israel. It's important to us. I know there are some Americans who think it's only important to Israel, but it isn't. It's important to the United States. Israel is still the canary in the coal mine. Whatever is targeted toward Israel is really targeted toward the United States. So when it comes down to whether the Turks will have a role, I don't think they will as long as the Israelis feel that it is not something that they can absorb. And I think the comments that Erdogan has made, some of which are very incendiary, are troubling for them. Could it be that there could be some resolution of this tension? I think Israel would love to see that. So it's possible Turkey could decide that normalization with Israel and tempering down the very inflammatory rhetoric is in their best interest. I hope they do. I think we all hope they do.
We mentioned Turkey, and Turkey, like Qatar, is one of the countries that want to acquire F-35s from the U.S. That is obviously a major concern for Israel as well. How likely is the U.S. administration to keep Israel's military edge in the region when we hear President Trump saying he doesn't mind making these sales of the F-35s?
You know, I know he's made the comments, but there's a couple of legal hurdles that would still have to be cleared. I don't foresee this happening anytime. I really don't. Partly because Turkey still has Russian equipment, which would be then a no-go for us being able to sell them F-35s. And the other is we still have the very definite agreement with Israel on quantitative military advantage. And that is a long-standing policy where we don't supply anyone anything that would take away Israel's what we would call quantitative military advantage, meaning that Israel is always going to have the freshest, the best, the most advanced technology that we have, because once again, it is in our best interest. This isn't charity. This is partnership. There's a big difference, and a lot of people, maybe even in Israel, don't fully understand it.
Ambassador Huckabee, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope to do it again. Thanks.